Okay, this video is going to go over Chapter 24, Objective 2, Part C, where we talk about proteins. And just to show you all and remind you what the structure of a protein looks like, this is your amino acid structure. So you've got that alpha carbon right there where you have 4 things attached to it. All of your amino acids are going to have the amino group, which has that nitrogen right there on one side. It's going to have that carboxylic acid group on the other side, that COOH. And then it's going to have a hydrogen on one side. So that's pretty much going to be standard for all of your amino acids. And what's going to be different from one amino acid to the other is that R group. That's the only thing that's going to be different. But notice what it has. It's got carbons, which means you probably already know where I'm going with this, is it is organic. Okay, so looking at proteins now, it is a macronutrient. It is required in large amounts by the body. It's organic. It contains carbons. It does directly produce ATP, just like our carbohydrates and our lipids did. So how much of that do you need a day? And I know you might be kind of surprised. Your protein content as far as your daily allowance is less than what you would need for carbohydrates and fat. So it's kind of surprising. 10 to 35% of your intake should be in the form of proteins. So for example, if you consume 2,000 kilocalories of food a day, then 200 to 700 are going to be kilocalories in the form of proteins. So that means you're going to need about 50 grams of protein a day. So you're going to need to remember this relationship here. This is just like your carbohydrates, by the way. So proteins and carbohydrates, both are going to produce 4 kilocalories of energy for every gram that you consume. So looking at our meatball marinara sandwich again, we've got our protein right there and our meatball marinara sandwich. So you can see if you eat the meatball marinara sandwich, you will consume 24 grams of protein. That's a little over half of what you need in a day. One sandwich, one meal, is more than half of what you need. Well, not quite half, sorry, 25 would be half. Not quite half of what you need for the whole day. So for this person, if they ate the meatball marinara sandwich, I'm going to change pen colors, they will have consumed 96 kilocalories in the form of proteins. So how did we get that 96? Well, you're going to take the 24, which is given in the food label here. We're taking that 24 right there. We're multiplying it by how many kilocalories of energy per gram. So we had 4 kilocalories of energy. So you're going to take that, multiply it together, and that's where that 96 comes from. So of this 435 kilocalories of energy, 96 of it came from the carbohydrates. So if you go back and add up how many kilocalories of energy we calculated from carbohydrates, from fats, and from proteins, that would total this 435. Okay, that's where that 435 came from. Proteins are made up of 20 different amino acids, like I said previously. The only thing different between one amino acid and another is that R group. Everything else on that amino acid is going to be the same. So some of the amino acids are essential and some of the amino acids are non-essential. You are going to need to know the numbers here. Essential means you must get them through your diet since your body cannot make them. So 9 of the 20 are essential, meaning you have to eat them. Your body cannot make those 9 amino acids. Now, the other amino acids, the other 11, are non-essential. And what that means is your body can make those. So again, I'm not going to ask you to memorize which ones your body makes versus which ones you need, but you do know need to know the difference between the definitions essential versus non-essential and how many of each, right? 9 essential, 11 non-essential. Looking at protein digestion, I know this is going back to chapter 23 a little bit here. So we have our protein that you consume when you eat a hamburger, let's say, through the help of this enzyme pepsin. It will then break that protein down into large polypeptides, into shorter peptides and amino acids, and then finally just those amino acids. So we have here the lumen of our small intestine. We've got our amino acids, protein fragments, and then eventually these proteases, these enzymes that break down proteins, turn into these individual amino acids. So proteins and protein fragments are digested to amino acids by pancreatic proteases. You should remember some of those terms. Those are then going to follow the arrows, pass through this epithelial lining right here, just like all the other ones did. The amino acids, I'm not going to ask you to know that they were brought in by active transport, but they're moving through the epithelial lining, and notice where they're going. They're going into the bloodstream just like the carbohydrates did. And then they're going to go off to the liver and then enter the official bloodstream, right? Because everything's going to the liver from the digestive system. So you have a handout here. You have your gastrointestinal tract, which is where your amino acids are. They're going to travel by way of the hepatic portal vein to get to the liver, just like your carbohydrates. Those amino acids in the liver are going to get converted to various substances. You can actually turn amino acids into fat. You can turn them into urea. You can turn them into protein synthesis can occur. You can put those amino acids back together, make different proteins, and get that sent out to all the tissues, such as fat tissue, your brain, muscle, and just travel through the bloodstream as electrolytes. So again, lots of use for amino acids. You actually have, as far as fuel reserve goes, you've got about 6,000 grams of fuel in the form of protein that is going to be stored in muscles. So as far as who gets the most storage here, what's stored the most, you got more fat storage than you have anything else. So I would be able to probably put those in order from greatest to least. So you're going to have less glycogen supplies. Even if you add up the liver and muscle together, that's still not going to exceed, they're still going to be on the low end there. So glycogen is going to be the lowest, and then comes the protein storage, and then the most you have available is fat storage. So now that we have these amino acids, what happens to them? So you've got proteins that your body makes. You can also make some of those non-essential amino acids from those proteins. And then you're going to have this amino acid pool that you have. So you're going to get proteins coming in from your diet. You're going to synthesize some of them. And then you're going to have this pool of amino acids. And from that pool of amino acids, you can make various things, such as proteins for various tissues, biological compounds, glucose, ketone bodies, or fatty acids. And you can go with the tricarboxylic acid cycle to yield energy. Tricarboxylic acid cycle is also known as the Krebs cycle, in case you haven't heard of that before, or the citric acid cycle. What does the body use proteins for? Well, it's kind of like, what does it not use proteins for? There's so many different proteins. This is just a little short snippet of some of the things that your body uses with the proteins. Again, you can make keratin. We talked about that in chapter 5. Hemoglobin, we talked about that in the blood chapter, can be used from the production of these proteins from that amino acid pool right there. Brain and nerves are going to be using them. Enzymes, yes, all proteins are a type of, enzymes are all a type of protein. Cellular construction workers. Antibodies, we talked about that in the immune chapter. Cellular messaging, they are those receptors. Muscles use proteins in the form of actin and myosin to allow movement to occur. So vast use of proteins. And that's going to conclude our protein chapter video. So the next one will be over the rest of the nutrients.